Welcome to today's DigitalHealth.London webinar. My name is Yinka McKinday and I'm the Programme Director for DigitalHealth.London, and I'm pleased to be joined here today by Sharon Barrett, who is the Deputy Chief Operating Officer and Industry Operations Manager for the National Institute for Health Research, otherwise abbreviated to NIHR, and it's a clinical research network for North Thames. It's one of the 3 clinical research networks across London that specialises in supporting clinical trials between industry and NHS partners. Now, for those of you who didn't attend any of our summer series, I'll just give you a little bit of context. So these sessions are an opportunity for us to focus on a specific area of support or a key challenge area that SMEs face. And if you did miss any of the summer sessions, we do have them available on our website for you to download and listen. So getting back to today, Sharon is going to provide us with an introduction to the NIHR infrastructure available to support industry with clinical trials in the NHS, and the steps that you need to take in order to ensure that your company is eligible for that support. And the way in which we'll run the session is that we'll divide the session into, first of all, a presentation, and Sharon will walk you through that, followed by a Q&A session, which is the opportunity for you to raise any questions that you have, and we'll be delighted to answer them. If you do have a question at any point during this presentation, please submit it through the questions box, and that should be on the bottom right-hand side of the webinar panel. And we'll come back to you later on that. Okay, so I'd like to hand over to Sharon.
Hello, thank you Yinka and to Matt for inviting me to talk to you today on clinical trials and what companies need to know to gain support from the Clinical Research Network. So as Yinka said, my name is Sharon Barrett and I am the Deputy Chief Operating Officer and Industry Operations Manager for the local North Thames branch of the NIHR Clinical Coordinating Network. I'd like to thank all of you who are attending today to join this webinar. As Yinka has said, I'm going to take you through some slides and we're going to go through an introduction, albeit brief, about the NIHR and the infrastructure. I'm going to talk you through some of the services that we provide, ensuring that your study is eligible for NIHR support, and also give you a couple of examples of how we can support our SMEs and our life science industry partners. Slides are available, as you can see, at the end of the session. I'll take some questions along with my contact details if there are any questions people want to take offline. So moving on, before I begin the main crux of the presentation, I just want you to take a moment to think carefully about what support it is you might need or require from the NIHR support, because this will help you in terms of directing the service that you need. What I've illustrated here really is the path one usually takes in terms of a clinical trial, and that's from the draft protocol that is written, is put in place, right the way through in identifying your sites, your investigators, taking you through the regulatory approval system, as well as getting your first patient in to be recruited and then effectively last patient out. So take that time to consider exactly where you are in your research pathway, whether it's protocol design or whether it is identifying investigators to maybe collaborate with. So in terms of talking through the NIHR landscape, in essence, what we have is a clinical research network here in the UK, and clinical research is a huge priority for Department of Health and UK PLC. And it's been well over a decade now that a number of white papers and care acts, and along with the NHS Constitution, that have all played a role in the introduction of the NIHR, so the National Institute of Health Research here in the UK. And what we're left with is one network and a multifaceted organisation which acts to support investigators and the life sciences industries, whether that be from large pharma to small, medium enterprises or SMEs, along with medtech, to undertake clinical research here in the UK. We have a system that has evolved over time, and now we have national coverage with 15 local offices across the country. I am the Deputy Chief Operating Officer for North Thames, which covers 23 organisations in our geographical region, stretching from here in central London, out east towards the Royal London and Berks, out to Essex and Southend, returning back via mid-Essex, taking in parts of Luton and Dunstable, before reaching the likes of the National Orthopaedic Hospital, down through London, Royal Free, Wishington, and where we are based here next to UCLH hospitals. So a very large geography, and the map here simply tries to illustrate the number or the range of clinical specialties that we cover. When we move to the next slide, what this is trying to illustrate to you is that the number of specialties and how they are grouped together. And this is the structure that you'll see in all of the 15 geographies across the country, and this similar structure in terms of support for the clinical groupings. Again, it's important to stop and review within your own processes and pathways which clinical area you think your planned studies might come under, bearing in mind that it might actually come under a couple. What you have here on the illustration is cancer is in a division all by itself, largely. But then in the second one along, Division 2, we've got the main key players within diabetes, stroke, cardiovascular. We have children, genetics, hematology, and reproductive health in the third division. We have dementias, mental health and neurological disorders, which are nicely aligned together in that Division 4. We have primary care and public health, which is a very important clinical specialty in terms of capturing a wider population outside of the NHS organisations. And then some other groupings within the last division, Division 6, which looks at critical care areas as well as specialty areas such as ophthalmology and ear, nose and throat. So in terms of accessing support, the NIHR Office for Clinical Research Infrastructure, or NOCRI as it's simplified, is a valuable resource for global life sciences today and improving the quality and efficiency of some of the successes within translational research. It is there to provide an opportunity to work in partnership with medical device agency, device and diagnostic sectors, as well as helping to translate ideas into innovative technologies. NOCRI will guide you to the right support you require, and for many of you, that might be towards the NIHR Clinical Research Network. Much of what I'm going to describe to you from now on can be found on the NIHR website, and that's www.nihr.ac.uk. And if you follow yourself to the industry section, it will give you a very good overview of the different types of services that we provide. You'll see from different components here, what we can do in terms of support is giving you access to expertise through local collaborations, and that might be whether we're looking to contact you with leading academics or experts, or to start a collaboration or working with medical device or digital health experts. It takes you through how to run your study through the NHS, and again I'll talk about that in a bit more. But again, I think what is key to raise here is the fact that there are funding opportunities for life sciences industry, and I will take you through a very brief snapshot of how that might help you. The NIHR have a number of programs and funding opportunities for life sciences research, and again, largely aimed at possibly some of the smaller companies, SMEs or medtech. There are a number of funding programs available, from innovation to help with large-scale sample clinical trials. But the NIHR do go under, the studies undergo a rigorous peer review, which has allowed the NIHR to become internationally recognised for its quality of research. What this illustrates here in this table is the number of research active programs that there are available. So along the top are listed the abbreviations for the different programs, and along the side is a type of research area depending on what you're wanting to do with your clinical trial itself. So, for example, if you wanted to look at aligning, collaborating and doing a study within public health, there's a number of different research programs you can go towards there. However, if you wanted to look at research within technology development, then it's suggested here that the I4I program would be the best for you. Now, again, most of the information behind this is on the website, so please do refer to that in terms of trying to understand which research program might suit you better. But just to give you an example of the I4I program, I4I stands for Invention for Innovation, and this program is a funding scheme that supports the development of innovative medtechs from proof of concept right the way through to clinical evaluation. It aims to de-risk early stage projects and have a strong potential for commercialisation within the NHS, so it does make them attractive to follow-on funders and investors. Contact details are there, I4I, and again, as I say, more information can be found on the NIHR website under the industry section, or again, contacting the NOCRI office, and they would certainly guide you in the right direction. So, moving on to the next section now, this is looking at how you would become eligible for NIHR support. All studies in England must comply with the Department of Health established criteria for commercial or non-commercial research to qualify for support. And studies either are automatically eligible or ineligible. We've got some examples here. So those that are automatically eligible, they've met the defined definition of research, but also they've got funding from an approved NIHR partner. And again, the list of those partners are available on the NIHR website. But there are some studies that are not eligible for NIHR support, and they largely refer to those research studies, or largely include audits or service evaluations within NHS, but also biobanking type studies as well. If you don't have any full funding, it also makes the study ineligible. But also if the study is already funded by an NIHR Biomedical Research Centre, again, that would make it eligible. So moving back then to how to, is your study or company is it potentially eligible for consideration for CRN support? There are a number of criteria really to consider in terms of whether you can get some support. So there is a more of a formal adoption process for these potentially eligible studies, and the majority of those, they come under investigator-initiated trials, or IITs. So this is more of a collaborative approach in terms of trying to get some support or trying to work together in terms of your NIHR programs. Essentially, through the adoption process, what they're trying to look for is a high-quality piece of work in terms that it has been peer-reviewed by people in that particular area of specialism. The funding that is available is open to all qualified researchers in England. It has to have a benefit to the NHS, taken into the priorities and needs and the realities of the NHS. So again, more information can be found on the website. I'm happy to take questions thereafter. Again, in terms of where you would be directed thereafter, the NIHR or through maybe NOCRI or other routes might send you towards the NIHR Clinical Research Network for what is service support. And so service support is a service that the NIHR Coordinating Centre offered to life sciences industries, and it includes a number of key areas towards the success of a study. It involves things such as early contact and engagement, so whereby a company would contact either the national team or myself locally to understand more about the processes, more about the funding potential, and some work about key collaborators, possibly in our area. We can provide early feedback if that's required, but also key to what we do is actually identify sites and gather intelligence as to whether that sites are appropriate in terms of delivering a study. We also carefully monitor the number of studies we have in our region. Here in North Thames we have over 400 clinical trials which we are supporting, And it's important that we work with our sites, our investigators, but also importantly with our sponsors in terms of making sure that the study is running successfully and it's running to time and target. Going into a little bit more detail, again, what this schematic here just takes you back to that original diagram at the first stage in telling you the path of the research process from the draft protocol all the way through to first last patient in. But then underneath it signifies the key elements that we would support in terms of that clinical trial that was up and running. So as I mentioned in my last slide, the early engagement and the site identification feasibility. We can support with the costings of the study. We can take you through the process for HRA approvals and approvals locally within NHS organisations. And as I said before, the study management, so we're looking at performance management and how we can support that study and sponsor as well as investigator. The next slide just illustrates our office. So we are based here in North Thames. We're based on a UCL office on Tottenham Court Road. As I said to you earlier, we have a large geography. We're in fact one of the biggest networks in the country in terms of the size of our portfolio. And we have a number of sites within our region. We have 23 in total, and 20 clinical commissioning groups as well, CCGs, along with 2 big medical schools. We've got Barts as well as UCL. So there's an awful lot of work that we do in terms of working with our sponsors and engaging with our key experts in our areas across all of those specialties that I alluded to earlier. I just wanted to give an example before I finish on what, I guess, a case study and how we actually can support. And I wanted to give you an example of a study where a company wanted to do a clinical trial. It's an observational study, multi-centred, looking to retrospectively analyse data from CT images from acute stroke patients. This is a study that was classified as an IIT, an investigator-led study, and essentially the coordinating centre, which is actually based up in Leeds for the network, was the original focal point for this company to approach in terms of identifying support. What it meant was the company had actually looked at trying to identify a collaborator, and in this case it was a chief investigator at Southend University Hospital, which is in our region, and to discuss the sponsorship of the study and how the study would run and how it would be supported thereafter. So discussions ensued with the chief investigator at Southend, along with the coordinating centre, and then the NIHR coordinating centre put out a call to other centres across the country to see who might be interested in taking on the study. A number of sites came on board, and the study's been was a huge success. And there's a second stage of the study following shortly. So it's just an example of, as I said before, this multifaceted organisation. There is lots of different opportunities for engagement and getting advice and support for your particular study. I suppose the last slide I wanted to just dwell on is the fact that there are a number of different ways to get access for the NIHR. I think for SMEs and for medtech digital health companies, I would advise going through NOCRI in the first instance to give you some advice and guidance and direct you to the right experts at the right time in your process. Thereafter, there are a number of different process maps in terms of who you would go to. The coordinating centre contact details are on the right-hand side of this slide here, and should you want to contact them in terms of if you're at the stage where you're looking at identifying sites, then they would certainly be able to give you some advice and some guidance. My time is up. I'm happy to open the floor up to questions now. I will leave you with a holding slide, which just lists some of the reasons why Life Sciences Industry should to come and work with us. one thing that's key, and I probably should have mentioned earlier, this is a service that's free to our life science industry partners. So please do contact us either through Support My Study at the NIHR Coordinating Centre or through NOCRI. I'm happy to take conversations offline, but I will leave it there and happy to take questions.
Thank you very much, Sharon. That was really insightful, and I'm hoping that everyone on the line also found it so. So this is your opportunity to ask Sharon some questions. As I said before, please submit them through the questions tab. I'm going to kick off, though, with a question myself. So there's going to be a number of companies, and they're all, I would assume, most of the companies on this call are digital health companies who are either developing platforms or apps or potentially medical devices. So one of the questions that I have on behalf of them is how they may not be sure whether they're ready to start this whole clinical trial process and to start accessing the services of the NIHR and NOCRI. So what would be your advice? Like how do they know? What are the things, where should they be in their journey to even start considering this? And that might be a hard question to answer, but are there any pointers there?
Yeah, I suppose that's why my first original slides was to think carefully about where you think you are in your process. But key to all of this is to contact us and just ask the questions. We have a number of cases where we have companies that have come to us, and if the case is I don't know the answers to the questions, I will know somebody that does. I often forward people to other services within the NIHR, so I've already talked about NOCRI, but there's a research design service, and although it's not necessarily directed as such for industry, they are there as a resource to ask questions. So do just approach. It might be that you're not ready, but at least if you understand what is available, then we can start planning ahead.
Okay, so we've got a question from Leanne Summers, and Leanne is really keen to understand whether the scope of your work covers care homes.
In short, yes, it should. We have a structure which is very directed towards the NHS and our secondary, tertiary, quaternary centres across the UK. But it's not to say that we exclude primary community care. We have a number of CCGs in this region. We have a primary care lead certainly within North Thames, which is again a post that is replicated across the country. We would like to see more research being undertaken in care homes and in the community. It's something that we are looking at doing certainly within our local region, but we certainly do not exclude care homes, no.
Brilliant. So I'd like to ask, how do companies, obviously you spoke about North Thames region, how do companies find out about their own local CRN?
Yes, so the website that I referred to earlier is a relatively new, has been changed recently, and essentially if you go to Clinical Network in my area, it will give you a list of the geographies, and I think if I'm not correct, I think you can put in even your postcode and it will give you your local office that way. Okay.
So keep the questions coming in. So the next question we have is about the different types of study. And we'd really be interested to find out, particularly for the types of companies that are on this call, what are the types of study that are going to be most relevant to digital health companies that they should be looking at, considering?
I don't know that I'm the best person to answer that question. I think that probably should be directed towards NOCRI, who would be more appropriate to answer the types of, or case examples again of studies that have happened in the past. Again, I'm happy to take that question forward and have it answered and then come back with a formal response. But yes, no, I think I wouldn't be the best person to answer that.
Okay. So the next question is about the resource and effort. So I think if I were in any of the positions that the companies are at, it's quite daunting potentially. And a lot of companies are cash poor. And so how long does it actually take to go through this process for a typical trial?
For a typical trial, it really does vary per study, because you have your draft protocol. In theory, there is a very set period of time to get your regulatory approvals in place and your first patient recruited. But then the end of the study depends on how many patients you're looking to recruit. That might be 1 to 2, but it might be 20,000. So the duration of a study can take a while. Again, prior to that, and it's the engagement early on, I think early engagement is key to some of this, and I think if you do that, then you'll be able to map out clearly what's required at what stage, so that it can be done in a time appropriate, it can be done in a timely fashion, so to speak. So,
what, in your experience of working with industry, what do they see as their biggest hurdles or challenges going through this process?
A lot of it is the processes that life sciences industries, big or small, have to go through, and it's the processes of identifying individuals and collaborators, the processes of going to identify sites, the processes for regulatory approvals, whether it be HRA, whether it be the MHRA. There are lots of different stages to go through. My advice is to contact us early. We're very willing and happy to take and lead people through those processes. I exist as the industry operations manager within the North Thames, and we have a large team readily available to help and take people through various support, whether it be through clinical specialty areas or through advice in terms of approval system. There's advice there on hand, so just contact us.
And the nature of that support, so is it that somebody would get almost like a navigator who they could sort of call upon whenever they felt the need to, or what's the format of that support typically?
Again, it does depend on the company and the stage they're at. But I get a lot of phone calls, and I arrange meetings with people who are so far away from having a draft protocol ready. They've just got a concept, they've just got a device or technology they just want to embed in the NHS, and they want to know what do they do next. And as I said before, I don't have the direct access to the medical devices experts, but I know people that do. So my advice is signposting really to the relevant place within the NIHR. And I'm always happy to act as that, as you say, that navigator, if they're not having much success, to come back to me so we can think of where then they could try again. So we almost sort of record that so we know where we've been really.
Now, can you see a situation where we start creating around the country, like if we obviously focus on North Thames, centres that are particularly primed for testing digital health solutions? Because also, I think obviously traditionally a lot of the work has been around pharma companies potentially, but now we're moving into an era where we're needing to start testing digital health innovations. Can you see a new sort of a new set of test sites coming up? For the prime for this, and are you already starting to see that?
That's it. We're already starting to see this coming through, and it's certainly a remit for us within this region to work with the digital health technology and the companies to try and support them through this, because it is an emerging area. I think there's a thirst for it within the NHS, and there's a lot of key collaborators or key potential collaborators out there wanting to come on board with some of these companies. So I think that it's just a case that we need to probably map things out more clearly here for investigators, and I think something as a webinar such as this is a key opportunity to engage with people at an early stage so that we can work together.
Brilliant, thank you. So we've got another question that's come through. So the question is, do you work with companies who have developed products outside of the UK who may be looking to enter the UK market?
Yes, there was a company not so long ago from Sweden. I met them at it was a medtech meeting actually, but they had developed a piece of software and they wanted to know how they would embed it in the UK, because they know The processes within the UK are strong in terms of the support, whether it be through funding through the NIHR or peer reviews or support for protocol design. So they were keen to work with sites in the UK, and they were looking at trying to identify a collaborator with one of the NHS, one of the universities that they could work with. So again, that discussion was had, and we just directed them to the relevant people within that clinical area. So
okay. So I just want to touch on costs. Now, you've mentioned that companies can access NIHR and NOCRI for free. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
But there are some costs. Obviously, the entire process of conducting a clinical trial is not free, otherwise everyone would be doing it. So would you be able to just maybe talk us through what are the costs that companies would need to be able to plan budget for?
Yeah. Again, not having direct exposure to the types of studies that digital health companies are planning, it's difficult to go into the detail. But essentially, software usually comes as part of a package in terms of a collaboration. So, for example, if a company were wanting to embed a new digital software or app within the NHS, that element of it would largely come from the company, from the digital health company. There are costs associated with maybe the collaborator and whether that funding is sought through an NIHR program. That might be a good way to have those negotiations. But what I wanted to stress is that if your study is eligible for adoption and it is on the portfolio, there is a wide resource out there that exists in terms of delivery workforce. And what that means is that there is a number of research nurses, research practitioners, research pharmacists, research trials practitioners that are out there and exist within the NHS already that are able to support studies. And the case study I alluded to earlier certainly tapped into that resource and was able to be able to recruit into that particular study. So again, it would have to depend on the type of study that exists. We could work out what those costs were and what that meant for the company.
But you could help them.
We could help them
create that cost.
Yes, exactly. Yeah,
that's brilliant. Okay. So, last chance for any questions from people on the call. I guess my last question really is so the overall recommendation is for people just to pick up the phone and get in touch. So if they were to contact you, irrespective of the fact that actually you may not be the nearest centre for them, would you be happy to take those calls and then to direct them to their most relevant centre?
Of course. What I could do is I could edit the slides I've onto the webinar here with a list of all the my equivalents across the country, so you have access to their contact details. But I'm happy to take any calls and then direct them in the right area.
That's brilliant. Well, thank you very much. As there's no further questions, just like to really thank you for taking time out of your busy day to speak to us about clinical trials. And we will make the slides available to those of you who've been on this call. And just to say that we have another couple of webinars coming up, which we'll post details on in due course. So thank you very much and have a good day.